Anyway, I was thinking about international airport, in fact. And I was thinking, you know what I like about those massive places? It's just the sheer size of it. Like when you go in an airport, there is thousands of people at any point in there.
Yeah.
And there's so much space still. It's really spacious. So it's kind of like, I feel it's the spacious place we kind of tend to go. It's just crazy that you go around, there's so much emptiness, I don't know.
That's a different way of looking at airports, I guess.
I know.
Anyway, we are live.
Hey guys.
Hey.
How are you doing today?
So welcome to another awesome episode of our New Zealand travel questions, where every single Sunday at 8 a.m. New Zealand time, we take your New Zealand travel questions on the live Q&A over here, the live chat, and answer them for you throughout the hour. So if you guys are meeting us for the first time, this is Robin and I'm Laura, and we're the team behind BackpackerGuide.NZ, which is New Zealand's largest travel guide. It's basically your Bible for everything to do with traveling in New Zealand, and it's absolutely free, so why not go and check that out? But if you're not really into reading, we do this live Q&A session every single Sunday at 8 a.m. New Zealand time, as I've just mentioned, but around the world, that is on a Saturday in the US, 4 p.m. EST or 12 p.m. PST. In Europe, that is also on a Saturday at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., depending on whereabouts you are. Yep. And on a Sunday morning in India at 1:30 a.m. So throughout the week, we do take your questions through our various different social media channels so that we can make a pool of questions to go through also during this live Q&A session. So if you do have questions throughout the week, make sure you put them in the comments of any of our YouTube videos, or you can go onto Facebook and send us a private message where you can just find us at BackpackerGuide.NZ. You can also send us a private message on Instagram, which is at BackpackerGuide.NZ, or you can mention us on Twitter at BPKGuide.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so Oates is already in. So good morning, Oates.
Checking in.
That was your favorite name you said last time. Yeah, so anything to do with food, Laura is gonna like it. And so that's pretty simple. So if you are, chocolate Mars bar, Laura is gonna love you as well. So there's a ranking right here. Depending on how food related your name is, the fastest we're gonna take your question. That's basically how she ranks it. Anyway, speaking of questions, you guys did ask us quite a few questions last week that we didn't have the time to go through. Plus, you sent us some questions on social media, on YouTube, on Facebook, and all of that. So I think we're going to be starting with a very easy one that we received on YouTube, which was from Prabjot Singh. Oh, I'm sorry about the name. Prabjot Singh on YouTube. He asked, which city in NZ have the most number of jobs? All right, so it's very simple. Which one are the largest city in New Zealand? But before we start talking about that, I just want to preface that for a lot of places in New Zealand, you're going to have a lot of jobs, but also a lot of competition. So very often, you are actually much, much better off going to a place that have much less jobs, but much less people looking for jobs. And so that usually is a very strong consideration when you actually try to find a job somewhere in New Zealand. Yeah,
finding a job in a small town is usually as quick as that, really. But yeah, compared to a big city where you are competing with loads of different, loads of people trying to find a job, then that's when things get a bit harder. So if you are really seriously trying to find a job, then actually maybe avoid the cities.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, to answer the question in just sheer number, the amount of job, if you count how many jobs is there available, the number one city will be Auckland. It's because it's the most populated city in New Zealand. I think it has more than half the New Zealand population within just that one city.
Yeah, I think it's got...
No, not more half, sorry, more than a quarter of the population.
Yeah, it's got more people living in Auckland than the South Island altogether.
Exactly. So there is a lot of people there. So therefore, there is a lot of jobs. But that also means that there is a lot of applicants for every job. And Kiwis love changing jobs. So, there is going to be a lot of competition all the time.
So you're not just competing with other travelers or backpackers. You're also competing with all the locals as well. So,
yeah. The next one would be Christchurch.
Yeah. So Christchurch is the largest city in the South Island. It's a little easier to find jobs in Christchurch than it is in Auckland, particularly in fields like construction, where they are actually still doing the rebuild from the earthquake they had in 2010. So there's definitely a lot of jobs in construction going in Christchurch. But again, for other sort of jobs in other industries, you might find a little bit more competition again, because
there's also
a lot
of there's also a lot of IT. In Christchurch, surprisingly enough, there's a lot of IT jobs as well in Christchurch, which is quite cool. So yeah, so Christchurch obviously does have a lot of jobs, and to be quite honest, we do prefer Christchurch, like as when we advise people to where to find a job in New Zealand, just because the competition is much lower. So there is a great amount of job and a very small amount of people applying for jobs. So getting a job in Christchurch is very, very fast, and also you're on the South Island already, which is the most beautiful part of New Zealand. So you'll be able to go on road trips and everything. So Christchurch is a very strong contender for like the best place to go to if you want to look for a job.
Yeah.
Now, it's still going with the sheer number of jobs, not how easy it is to get jobs, the sheer number of jobs. The next one is Wellington.
Yeah. So Wellington is the capital city of New Zealand, and it is located at the very south of the North Island. Again, by being the capital city, there are plenty of jobs available across loads of different industries, whether it's retail, hospitality, tourism, sort of warehouse jobs and that sort of thing as well. So there's really a wide range of jobs to choose from. Again, there's going to be the most competition, especially within the city centre of Wellington, but think about some of the outer regions of Wellington as well. There's regions like the Wairarapa, there's the Kapiti Coast, Upper Hutt, Lower Hutt, all those sort of areas as well. So if you can't find a job within the city centre of Wellington, then think about branching out to some of those outer suburbs as well, where there's more likely to be a little less competition.
And being the capital city of New Zealand, Wellington also does have a lot of administration-related jobs, and that includes also a lot of IT type of jobs, which is something that a lot of people kind of forget. So if you're looking for this kind of office and white-collar jobs, well, usually Wellington is the best spot for you guys to go to because, well, it's the capital city. So there is all the services, like, the tax kind of people. There is the social service kind of people. There is, all those kind of government, basically, organizations are all there, plus the parliament and all those kind of things. So that's a lot of stuff. And a lot of countries also have the embassy in either Wellington or Auckland. And so for this reason, there is some jobs in those kind of places as well. So it's a very kind of international city, and actually it has been voted one of the most livable capital in the world. And so it's a pretty cool, it's a pretty good place to live in.
Yeah.
Okay, and lastly, on the top 4 of the city with the most number of jobs, not where it's easy, but the most number of jobs, it is Tauranga.
Yeah, so Tauranga is quite an interesting place to work because there is some quite different types of jobs available. Of course, you've got all your city sort of jobs, again, retail, hospitality, working in warehouses, that sort of thing that has all that there, but it also is surrounded by a lot of fruit growing regions. So there's a lot of jobs going for kiwi fruit picking, working in different types of orchards as well. So if you're looking for an easy entry level job, if you've got no experience in pretty much anything, or if you're looking for something that you are like, so you can maybe improve your English or something like that, then there's a lot of opportunity for fruit picking around Tauranga. And a really cool thing about Tauranga as well is that there's a lot of working hostels there. So there's backpacker hostels where you can go there, and if you do stay there long term, they can help you find a job pretty much for free, super easy. So that's really a good way to sort of kickstart your time in New Zealand with getting a pretty easy job to get.
Yeah, and an extra tip about Tauranga, if you are looking for if you're looking to buy a car to get yourself a bit of freedom during the gap year in New Zealand and travel around, Tauranga actually has some of the cheapest kind of used car and used camper van companies that you can get there. There is even some companies over there which actually offer buyback schemes, meaning that they can sell you your car and then buy them back from you. And, it's usually something that you can only find in Auckland, but Tauranga start having some of those as well, which is really handy. So Tauranga for us is a very strong contender for like where to get started with your gap year in New Zealand and where to go and find a job and settle yourself for a little bit. Also the fact that, it's such a cheap bus ride from Auckland. It's sometimes go down to like $15 in some days. So it's really awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our take on the places in New Zealand that have the most jobs. Again, this is not the places in New Zealand where it's going to be the easiest for you to find a job. There are some places which are much easier than that, but it's going to be the one which has the sheer amount in like high amount of numbers of jobs
and
available.
probably the biggest variety of jobs as well. If you want to dabble in a few different things, maybe there's more opportunity.
Yeah, I mean that's what Gap Year is anyway.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of want to try a couple of different jobs rather than just like going, you know, just doing the one thing you used to do at home and everything. It's just boring, you know. So it's kind of like new experiences involved right here. All right, cool. So if you did find this video useful, like and subscribe. We're always here to help. And in the meantime, we're getting back to the live chat. Asha, good morning, Asha. Bonjour de Montréal, GPCA. Bonjour. That means hello in French. I know it's hard.
Not heard that one before.
No, it's great stuff. Margarita Mama say aloha.
Aloha.
That's hello in Hawaiian.
Okay, thank you.
I'm here to help today.
Translator here.
And Charlie says hi. That's hello in English.
Oh, okay,
Quite crazy, right? Margarita Mama says, is it true that customers don't tip in New Zealand restaurants and cafe? If we do tip, would it be weird? Would the tip go to the server or the restaurant? Actually, that's a really good question. Like, do you need to tip in New Zealand?
Full article on
that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read that again, and actually we're going to give you a lot of tips about tipping. All right, cool. So Margarita Mama asks on YouTube, is it true that customers don't tip in New Zealand restaurants and cafe? If we do tip, would it be weird? And would the tip go to the server or to the restaurant? All right, so it is true that the general rule in New Zealand is not to tip in cafes or restaurants. I'm going to share with you. A story that happened to me kind of early on in my stay in New Zealand, and we were actually going out in a bar, like kind of with music and everything, like bar/club, and we did order like a bunch of shots because you know that's what you do when you party, and so we ordered a bunch of shots, and I think it was like $45 or something, and I just left. I just get 50. And, you know, I was like, okay, about like, you know, an extra, a little bit about 10%, a little bit above 10%. It's a reasonable tip. That's what you do quite often. So I left that here. And so I went with my shower, did our shot and everything like that. And actually the bartender walked around the counter and found me in the crowd and gave me back my $5 because it was so unusual for him to be tipped like that. I thought I just forgot or something like that, which was kind of weird to me at the beginning because the previous country I was living in before New Zealand was the US, and where obviously, you know, there you do tip for everything, everyone, all the time. So to me, that was my first experience with tipping in New Zealand, and obviously I did learn pretty quickly that tipping is just not a thing here. So most of the time in New Zealand, you won't tip unless in very specific circumstances.
Yeah. So just the sort of first rule about tipping in New Zealand is that in New Zealand, it's kind of like, it's not customary to tip whatsoever, but if you do feel like you've received exceptional service, it is obviously appreciated if you give a tip. By all means, it's not expected in any restaurant or anything like that. They won't be sort of, you know, giving you dirty looks or spitting in your drinks or whatever if you're not tipping. It's just, it's usually more of a nice surprise for the servers or waiters. And to answer your questions about whether the tips go to the restaurant or the servers, usually in New Zealand, the tips are collected in like in a pool, in a jar for the servers to distribute evenly between them, maybe at the end of the week. Obviously, because they don't receive that much tips, they don't need to distribute all the tips like every day. So so it's usually shared evenly between the servers. You're not necessarily giving a tip to that one server who actually had the good service. Yeah,
so to that extent, so if you do hand it, like let's say to the server, let's say, you know, it's a valet for parking and everything, and you hand it to that person, like let's say just like hand to hand, they will usually put it in their pocket and they will usually keep it to themselves. However, if you put it in a tip jar or if you add it to your receipts or to anything like that, this is usually shared. So the few places where you're going to find that tipping is kind of welcome or offered as an option is usually first in very touristic areas. So like, you know, in Auckland Central, in Queenstown, all those kind of things, you will find that every single cafe will have a tip jar. So it's usually next to the counter. And this is where you basically just leave the change there, and there's this big tip jar, and there, basically all the stuff. Very often in New Zealand, you will find that the whole staff is actually sharing the tip jar, so that actually goes to the cook as well, which is different from usually just being the waiting staff in other countries. Other places where tip is going to be kind of encouraged and invited will be in hotels. So like, those big hotels like in Auckland, or those big kind of place where you have usually conference and a lot of international travelers. When you get a receipt, when you need to sign, you stay in the hotel and then you sign everything to your room. And then at the end of the room, you settle your bill and you pay like, whatever you own. Every single time you're going to sign for a receipt, there is going to be a like tip and write how many you want to put on. And then at that point, this goes into, so this is paid to the company, and then the company split the tip within the selected amount of staff, which actually has right to get tips. So for example, like I think it's cleaning crews, serving crews and everything, but I think the kitchen hands and everything don't get the tip, just those kind of things. So when you sign at that point, you can write tip on there. And also, you will be able to give tip quite often to what I was saying, like valet and everything like that. So usually it's kind of like the reason why you give a tip is because you want them to take good care of your car or this or that. So at that point, you can tip those guys, and usually cash on hand straight away. But, be aware that may surprise a few people. Let's say the more international places you're going to be staying in, so like the bigger the hotel, like let's say Sky City Grand or something like Grand Millennium, or one of those big kind of like international hotel where there is, sometimes people that just come for a conference don't leave the hotel and then leave again. Then at that point, they will be more used to that. But if it's places like little motel and everything, they won't expect it at all.
Yeah. Another thing to note about tipping in New Zealand, more for the wages of waiters and stuff like that. I know in the US that it's usually a lot of money is made on tips when you're doing sort of hospitality jobs. But in New Zealand, the minimum wage is actually quite high, so that you don't really need to rely on tips. So if you are looking for work yourself in New Zealand and thinking, oh, I'm not going to make enough money because they don't tip, that's not really the case here. It's more that you are actually given a much higher, I think, higher minimum wage than the average country. So so that's basically where it's made up in the tips. And also, bear that in mind, obviously, when you're tipping any servers or anything as well, just know that they are being paid at least quite a high minimum wage, so you don't need to feel guilty or anything like that.
So that's the thing with New Zealand, and why tipping is not that common and everything, is that we're getting really close to $20 an hour as the minimum wage. It is a lot of money, even for entry-level job, to be quite honest. So tipping is not necessarily mandatory, right? You can definitely live very well when earning $20 an hour. So for this reason, tipping is not, you're not taking food away from their mouth. In the US, if you don't tip a waitress or waiter, you're taking food away from their mouth. In New Zealand, you're definitely not, because they're, close to $20 an hour, which is, it's a lot of money.
Another thing, just one more thing to mention about actually where you will be paying a little bit extra sometimes in cafes and basically restaurants is during public holidays. There is a public holiday fee of about 10 to 15% on top of the any of the item on the menu that you're paying for. So just bear that in mind. If you are eating out on a public holiday, it is going to be a little bit more expensive.
So you will find on your receipt like public holiday surcharge, and sometimes there are going to be some establishment that will actually say there is no public holiday surcharge, but the waiting staff at this point is paid time and a half, which means that instead of being paying $20 an hour, they pay $30 an hour. Plus, I think you get some extra holiday as well. So at that point, it's not, you still don't have this feeling of like, I have to tip, because everybody is very well compensated in New Zealand for their work. So that's basically what we have for tipping in New Zealand. So I hope that this answered your question, Margarita Mama. I know that you come from a very different culture, and I hope that it gets you to understand a little bit more the New Zealand culture. And if you guys find this video useful, like and subscribe. And obviously, we're going to put in the description below a link to an article that will go much more in depth into tipping in New Zealand. All right, let's go back to the live chat. Actually, I saw someone that's taking us very literally to our questions. So Melody's Ritmo. So, on the description of the video, we say, ask us anything when we go live, right?
Yes.
So this person is asking us anything. Hi, how can I tell if my turtle has a left eye disorder?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, Melodies.
Because obviously we're experts, right?
Yeah.
We're experts about turtles.
And especially if the left eye does look like it has a disorder, then that's probably a good way to tell.
No, here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I will do. For the entire week, you only place the lettuce leaf to feed your lettuce, to feed your turtle to the left. If you see the turtle Losing weight, at that point, it hasn't left eye disorder because it cannot see the letter sleep. So this is how I will actually diagnose that.
Do turtles eat lettuce?
I think so. What do turtles eat? I think they eat lettuce.
I imagine they would eat things to do with what's in their natural habitat. So.
And what is that?
I don't know.
I think turtles eat lettuce.
Okay.
Melody, Melody's Ritmo, can you tell us what do you feed your turtle? Anyway, that was a funny one. Cool. Charlie is asking us our favorite place to stay in New Zealand, a hotel or motel. We actually have a video about that to compare like all this type of accommodation, I think. But
yes, we do. But personally, we prefer to stay in more like backpacker hostels and holiday packs, that sort of thing, because we like to meet other travelers. Obviously, with what we do, we write a travel guide, so we do like to meet other travelers and be able to basically find out people's different experiences of traveling around New Zealand. But obviously we have stayed in a few motels and hotels around the country. I'm thinking of quite a fun one is the Forgotten World Motel in Taramanui. And I think if Charlie is that the same guy that was living in Taranaki.
I think so.
Yeah, so that's not too far from Taranaki.
Yeah, go try it, mate.
Go through the Forgotten World Highway, go to I can never pronounce this word, but Taramanui, and go to the Forgotten World Motel where they have some pretty fun activities there, as well as themed accommodation. And
to go back to Melody's turtle, Grant actually has a really good suggestion.
Oh yeah.
He says, ask the turtle's right eye for advice. So here you go.
Okay.
That's a lot of expert tips right here. Thanks so much for that, Melodies. Oates says as another question, of course, it depends on the person, but if you live in New Zealand, work full-time, say as a fruit picker, for example, you pay your rent, food, everything, do you tend to have some money left over? Yeah, honestly, it's pretty easy to save money in New Zealand. It really obviously depends where you live. If you live in a city center, you have your own apartment and everything like that. Rent is going to be the thing that stings you the most. But if you do, for example, work as a fruit picker, you can live in a hostel, so you live with your co-workers and everything. It's really fun kind of stuff. You can save quite a lot of money. So yeah, definitely, yes, you will have some money left over. I personally never had problems saving money in New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly. And when I first came to New Zealand, I did entry-level jobs, working minimum wage, and I was able to save, after about 3 months of working, I was able to save some money. So yeah.
Bye-bye, Charlie. Thank you for popping in. That was nice. It says bye already.
Yeah.
Okay, Raj Bhupali says, how is healthcare job market? I'm going to pursue a master health degree at Victoria Wellington University. How do I put myself in the job industry? We have no idea about the healthcare job industry. It's such a specific field.
I would say that healthcare
is
a job shortage in New Zealand. So yeah, healthcare is the way to go. In terms of getting yourself into the industry, that is not something that we're expertise on. We
apply for a job and get a job.
Yeah.
There you go.
We talk mainly about the travel experience in New Zealand, working holiday, that sort of thing. So this isn't really the right channel for that question.
Yeah. But there are some healthcare jobs in New Zealand. We just won't be able to give you specific advice.
Definitely, if you're studying at Wellington University, they're probably the better people to ask about that.
Shirley says, "Hey, Shirley, how are you doing? What is the best way to find flats or room share?" Oh, that's a good question, actually.
Yeah, we actually do have some information about that on Backpacking.
All right, cool. So, Shirley, we're just gonna keep talking to everybody on the chat for a second, and then we'll actually do that question like as a full question and give you a lot of tips and everything. Margarita Mama say it was useful, makes a lot of sense. The New Zealand just really take care of their employee, which is great. Yeah, it is. It's pretty good. You make decent living here, that's for sure. Raj asked if you can meet us in New Zealand. We actually did organize a drink with everybody not that long ago, so quite a few people join in. So yeah, if we do organize one of those, definitely pop in. It's fun, it's just sharing life experiences. It's cool. Grant says, what's the worst job you had in New Zealand? What's the best not your job on video you do now? Not that one, the other. Wow, that's not the worst job I've ever had. I mean, it's pretty fucking fun. I just swear. No, it's pretty awesome. The worst job I had in New Zealand, I think, I was working in a furniture store, and literally I was working in the warehouse of that furniture store, but I was under the store in a very old building. and the basement was basically like really kind of low ceiling. So I think I'm 186 tall, right? And so I think the ceiling was like maybe 1.5. So I had to crouch the whole time to go grab some really heavy kind of furnitures and get them out of the warehouse. It was really awful. It did break my back.
Yeah,
and so I really hated that.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I have enjoyed all the jobs that I have done in New Zealand, but I did work in a kitchen at the Queenstown airport making airline food, and I really hated going into the walk-in freezers.
Yeah,
that's pretty much the worst thing about that. Just going into the walk-in freezers is never fun.
Nah. And then as kind of furnace job I've done, which is this one here, it wasn't really a job, but when we did New Zealand's Biggest Gap Year, we tried a bunch of different jobs. And this one time we actually tried dairy farming, where it was absolutely hilarious. You've got to watch this video, guys. Just type dairy farming and Backpacker Guide on YouTube, and yeah, we ended up like dancing and everything. But we tried like milk right out of the cow tits and everything, and it was just very. Then we fought with it, and anyway, it was absolutely hilarious. I really had a blast, and so yeah, that was pretty cool. So yeah, that was for my favorite one. Which one was your favorite one?
Favorite, I liked beekeeping.
Oh yeah, beekeeping was fun. Yeah.
Also on New Zealand's Biggest Gap Year, where we did 365 days of 365 activities, we got the opportunity to join a beekeeper and see how that's done. Obviously, because Manuka honey is so famous in New Zealand, and yeah, that was really interesting to go out in our bee suits and go take out some trays. And we were actually given a full tray of Manuka honey.
Oh wow, that was just so much. It was
amazing, and it tasted delicious. But unfortunately, we actually left it in a hostel in Wanganui.
And honestly, that was at least, I'm not joking, because retail value for Manuka honey is really expensive. There was at least $500 worth of honey
so
that we left
found
behind.
That was a treat for them.
Yeah. All right, cool. Before we answer everybody else's question, we're going to go through Shirley's question, because I think that was quite cool.
Yeah.
But before any of that, guys, there is a turtle update. Melodies tells us that the turtle is kind of watching these streams on and off, and it creeps me out a little bit. Well, now it creeps us out as well. Is it watching with the right eye, left eye? What's it like?
And when is your turtle planning on coming to New Zealand?
Yeah,
let us know.
Yeah, did the turtle get a working holiday visa? Also, do turtle eat lettuces? Laura still wants to know.
I still want to know what does a turtle eat?
Anyway, so
does it like hangi? You'll like hangi in New Zealand.
All right, so we'll go through Shirley's question. Then we're going to go through all of you guys' questions. There's Work We Love, Margarita Mama. There's another question from Grant. All of that. So we're going to go through. All those other questions just after that, and hopefully Melodies will have another turtle update by the time that we finish with that next question. Okay. So guys, hang on. There's a lot on the agenda right now. Grant says that the turtle will have some problem in biosecurity. I am completely focused on the turtle today.
Yeah.
I am not focusing on anything else.
We'll get back to the turtle later.
Okay. Let's focus.
Let's just let the news sort of catch up.
All right. Okay. So Shirley Kim asked us on YouTube, what is the best way to find flats which are room to shares in New Zealand? All right, so flatting is one of the most common way of finding accommodation in New Zealand when you are on a gap year or on a working holiday visa. So flatting, in short, it's your average episode of Friends. You have an apartment with a bunch of friends which are living together, and you share all the facilities. So usually you have your own room, but then you share kitchen, you share lounge, you share bathroom, and all of those kind of things. This allows you to be able to have kind of your own place, which is not a hostel, but without having to pay like the full rent for the apartment or the house. This is very, very common in New Zealand, and even a lot of Kiwis are actually living in flats just because rents can be quite high. But by doing that, you can divide the rent by the number of people living in. So that's usually 3, 4, or 2. Now, a lot of time, the number one worry that you're going to have is if you're a couple. A lot of places will not ask, we will say, we don't accept couples. The reason being is that a couple definitely changes the dynamic of a place very much. So first up, that's, for voting power, you get 2 people that are always going to be voting together. So if it's a flat with only like 2 people, well, then that the person already living here will completely lose the control over the flat, and that may not be comfortable for them. Second, usually couple have very different needs than people which are just on the go traveling single and all of that. So it's quite different vibes and everything. So usually when you pick a flat, you pick it mostly for the vibe. But there are many places to find flats in New Zealand. The flat finding system is super simple just because, there is so much option.
Yeah.
And let's go through that.
Okay, so number one on our list, because we do have a full list of the different ways to find a flat on BackpackerGuide.NZ, which we will link to in the description below. But the number one thing you can do is to use bulletins. Now, for those people that don't know what a bulletin is, because New Zealand is not really...
What the hell is a bulletin, Laura?
Because, yeah, New Zealand is a little bit behind the times sometimes, and a bulletin is basically like a magazine or kind of like a newspaper that's distributed in some of the larger towns or cities in New Zealand, particularly in, I'm thinking of Queenstown. There's the Lakes Weekly Bulletin, for instance, which you can find in convenience stores or bottle stores around the town. And this is basically it's basically like a magazine just full of listings for jobs, for flatting, all of that sort of thing. Also any events that are happening in the town as well. So yeah, you can, in some towns you can find bulletins. I think in Wanaka as well they have a bulletin. So make sure that you find out what day they are that bulletin comes out. Usually, because especially in the larger South Island towns like Queenstown and Wanaka, it's very competitive to get a flat. So make sure on the first day, when you know it's out, get it, because they run out so quickly, and basically start contacting people through that straight away.
All right, so next one is obviously all your coworkers and your friends around the town. So usually what happens is that you are picking a town that you kind of feel like, it's going to be giving you good travel options and everything like that. And then you stay in a hostel or backpacker. Or some people stay in hotel, but, you've got to have the budget for that.
Yeah.
And then you start looking for jobs. Then you find a job and you kind of like, okay, well, I've been I have a job now. I've been in a hostel for about a month. I kind of want to find my own place now. And so usually another really good way to find a flat would be to ask your coworkers and the friends that you made here, and to know if there is someone that's looking for a flatmate. That's very common. I mean, Kiwis are extremely kind of unreliable, but in the fun sense, they change their mind quite often. So basically, it's kind of like, I'm going to live here for a wee while, but after 6 months, they're already moving on somewhere. It's not like they don't really stand still for 10 years. So they're really very much against routine. That's what I want to say about unreliable. And so things move around really quickly. So asking your friend and coworker for if they know anyone that needs a flatmate is a very, very easy one.
Yeah. Another way to find flats is through Facebook groups. So around New Zealand, there are usually Facebook groups for every town. Those buy and sell groups. I'm sure that they're probably in your country as well. Like you have the town name, buy and sell. Usually on these sort of Facebook groups, or whether it's any other name like a town community group or something, people will post if they have spare rooms for rent on there as well. Again, that's an easy method. All you need is an internet connection, a phone, and just make sure that you contact people as soon as possible so that you get a chance to get there before others do. But also make sure that you do go around to visit the flat first before you actually say yes.
Okay, next one, and I am actually not joking. It still exists. It's the supermarket boards. So yes, New Zealand still have those. Those are a small part of a wall, usually right after the cash register, where people can take a little piece of cardboard and write like, oh, I'm selling a couple of sheep, and then put them on the board, and then people can just call them. Well, New Zealand still have that in 2019. No joke. So this still exists, and I'm not joking, but you can use those, and quite often they put flatmate stuff. So if you go shopping, just look at the board and just see if there's one. And if you're really desperate, you can write down like, I'm looking for a flat, contact me, and just put it on there. But that still exists.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm talking about.
And they're used quite a lot.
I know. I'm
all
just
of them
shocked.
are pretty full.
It's crazy. Every single time you go to the supermarket, I actually stop by it because I'm just in awe. I'm like, oh wow, someone is selling a bike on a board in the supermarket. That's happening.
That's classic Kiwi charm. That is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I'm just in shock because I'm not mocking right now. I'm just like, really, that still exists, but it's just fun.
Yeah. Anyway, another sort of archaic way of finding a job in New Zealand, I mean, it's not a job, a flat in New Zealand, is through newspapers.
Does it still exist as well?
Yeah, newspapers still exist in New Zealand. I actually think they do still exist elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of local newspapers in New Zealand for local towns, and they will have the classified ads in the back for, again, for jobs, for, garage sales, that sort of thing, and also for rooms to rent. So that's always good to get a newspaper. Most of the time they're free to buy, but sometimes you might have to pay a little bit to get a newspaper.
If they're free, don't buy them.
Yeah, sorry. Free to pick up from wherever you may see them. Cafes.
Well, it is 8:35 in the morning, ladies and gentlemen, and Laura is already drunk. All right. The next one is roommates' website. So there are a few websites for you to find a flat. And the number one is Trade Me. It's kind of like the Craigslist of New Zealand. So it's
or the eBay.
Yeah, the eBay. And there is a lot of little kind of offering. And so there is Flatmate in there as well. So you can just browse that. There is also NZ Flatmate and Easy Roommate. I know Easy Roommate sounds like a really dodgy website name, but it is something to find easily, a roommate or a flatmate. So those are... They don't necessarily work as well as the other method from our personal experience, but there are some decent options if you kind of want to cover every single ground that you can.
Of course, it's best to use a combination of all those things rather than just one and hoping that is going to be the way to go. But it's usually to find a flat as quickly as possible. Use a combination of those things we've